Let's begin with settling into silent mind. Not forcing it at all, just settling. Relaxing on the out-breath. And then, like a stone that sinks down through the water of a deep forest pool. On each out-breath, you sink a bit more. Until you rest quietly on the bottom of this deep pool. You remain aware of the entire pool, of the sun shining down and shafts of sunlight piercing the water. Of a leaf that drops in and slowly settles down to the bottom. Of a water bug skittering along the surface. Aware, but entirely at rest. Why is this important? A quiet, alert, relaxed mind is the prerequisite for the mysterious pivot to turn and Dharma gates to open. I think everyone here has been sitting so earnestly and has experienced some measure, maybe some large measure, a few minutes, a whole period, sometime in completely quiet mind. This is stepping into the gateway of Buddha mind. This is why a quiet mind is important. It is the gate into original mind. Why is this such an important gate? Inside the circle, the self vanishes, the circle of that intimacy. When quiet mind opens. Inside the circle, the self vanishes, neither existent nor non-existent. Intimately conveying spiritual energy, it subtly turns the mysterious pivot. When the mysterious pivot turns, original nature auspiciously appears. When Kowa Nejo Zenji asked Dogen Zenji, "What is the spirit of practicing in a monastery?" Dogen Zenji replied, "Just sit. Practice continuous sitting in a hall or pagoda. Don't socialize. Continuously give up all thoughts and views, and the way becomes more intimate. Take joy in sitting harmoniously with yourself." Isn't that a beautiful line? Take joy in sitting harmoniously with yourself. If it's that important, how do we enter that quiet mind? And what blocks it? To just sit and let the mind settle into its natural state is not something that we ordinarily do in our daily life. Maybe we touch silent mind for a moment when we see a beautiful sunset, and the mind stops briefly. Or we look at the night sky and suddenly our mind is drawn out into the immensity of the universe that this tiny planet is turning in. Unfortunately, when our mind becomes quiet, it doesn't last for very long. It says, "Oh, that's a beautiful sunset. I think I should take a picture of it with my iPhone." Or, "Is that a star, or is that part of Elon Musk's Starlink? I don't know about him. I definitely have some thoughts about him." This is exactly what blocks it. The mind turns away from pure presence and begins talking again. Have you ever noticed that when you're experiencing a quiet, settled mind, the mind will appear and start looking for a problem to think about? Somewhere in there's got to be a problem, and I'm here to solve it. That's craving again. To just sit here and let the mind settle into its natural state can seem boring. Maybe this one-word thought, boring, is an example of how our mind blocks our experience of original mind. Or maybe boring is a very high state. I encourage you to investigate boring. What blocks it? What blocks our access to original mind? It's innate to all of us and to all of existence. The trees in the forest and the flowers on the altar, even the floor, aren't confused about it. They aren't working hard to realize it. They just manifest it. This means it's calling to us all the time, here, 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 here. But we're deafened. By what? Again, Dogen Zenji. This is an informal talk he gave, recorded by Koen Ejo Zenji. Dogen also said, the primary point of awareness for those who practice the way is to be free from the idea of the self. To be free from the idea of the self means not to be attached to the self. Without being free from the self, the way of Buddha ancestors cannot be attained. Even if you master the words of ancient teachers and continue sitting like iron or stone for 1,000 lifetimes in myriad eons. Further, mastering the expedient and complete teachings or exoteric or esoteric teachings without being free from attachment to the self would be like counting another's wealth without owning half a penny for oneself. And in our chant book, we have the Pukan Zazengi, Dogen Zenji's instructions. He says, therefore, put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing phrases, and learn to take the backward step that turns the light and shines it inward. Body and mind of themselves will drop away, and your original face will manifest. If you want to realize such, get to work on such right now. Once you have adjusted your posture, take a breath and exhale fully. Rock your body to the right and left. This helps establish the center. And settle into steady, immovable sitting. Think of not thinking. Not thinking. What kind of thinking is that? Non-thinking. This is the essential art of Zazen. So these are very succinct and very direct teachings. And Dogen Zenji's taught us what to do with the body when we sit down. But then what to do with the mind. Think of non-thinking. What does he mean by non-thinking? At first, non-thinking is an active practice because it's so unfamiliar to us. There are many ways of arriving at the experience of non-thinking. If the mind is active, we might ask it to be quiet. We used to teach marimba in the 4th grade in the school in Klaskanai. And sometimes we would come in with our instruments into the classroom and the kids would be very noisy and excited. And one of the teachers would say, "Heads down, class." And they would all just put their heads down and the room was completely still. So that might be an instruction you could give to your own head. Put it down. How to do this? How to cultivate non-thinking? How to lose interest in our thoughts? If you are with someone who only talks about themselves all the time, continuously, except when they're asleep, how engaging or boring or off-putting would that be after a few days, a few weeks? So why do we indulge in it? It's really an essential question. Keizan Zenji said, by putting an end to your own self-inflicted confusion, you will be able to experience this one mind, this bright intrinsic nature. Self-inflicted confusion, isn't that interesting? Constant thinking. How to open the experience of original nature. There's a koan, what was your mind before your parents were born or your grandparents were born? If you think of when you were a baby, all of us were babies, and you were lying in your bed before you had words in your mind. So if adults are talking to you, it's just sound. It's just so it's a sound that's no different from any other sound. No different from the owl. And it's getting dark. And you're full, not hungry. You're warm, you're comfortable, and you're just lying there. And you have no words in your mind. And you don't understand words. What is that experience? And a baby sometimes moves its hand and is surprised at this thing that's appeared in front of it. What is it? And then, ow. Complete innocence. Nothing added. That's the experience of original mind. How to enter the experience again, which we know. We know from ancient times. We know from this lifetime. We might give our mind something else to focus on. I mentioned that the Buddha taught substitution. Like the breath. The magic of the breath is that it's always with us, day and night. So if we wake up in the middle of the night, not to be distressed, the breath is there. Just waiting for you to remember to practice with it. And more importantly, the breath is always in the present moment. Always in the present moment. It is our trusty guide into the present moment. Our mind is used to wandering freely. So at first we may need to give it support, like counting or visualizing the breath. Visualizing the breath as flowing out through the 84,000 pores, in through the pores. There's so many ways to visualize it. Sending peace with the breath into our own being with each breath, and letting that peace suffuse the whole body. And then on the out breath, sending that peace out into a troubled world. This was Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching. Or a silver moon disk in the heart, spinning, and sending out peace, or the trees breathing out oxygen to nourish us, and our breathing out our CO2 to nourish them. This exchange as we breathe, and so on. Many, many ways to add support so we can stay with the breath, which means stay with now. But all of these ways of supporting our concentration do add an element of thought to the simplicity and ultimately the pure pleasure of practicing with the breath. Huho says, we need to fall in love with the breath. How simple. When we find ourselves looking forward to practice with our beloved breath, and eventually with our beloved heart and eyes and hands and feet, our beloved Sangha, and so on. Historically, there have been arguments in Zen schools about gradual or sudden realization. In our life, long life, hopefully for all of us, both are essential. It is years of gradual practice that clears the ground of the heart-mind and leads to what we experience as sudden enlightenment. The three essentials, sila, samadhi, and prajna, are cultivated gradually. Sila, studying and living guided by the precepts. Samadhi, the quiet, open mind. Prajna, the wisdom deeper than our thoughts, deeper, broader than our limited life experience, can produce for us. If we aren't keeping the precepts, it's very difficult to enter samadhi. The mind ground is agitated Which person did I tell which lie to? But I can't go back and tell the truth now. Should I apologize for getting angry? But they made me angry. When the mind ground is agitated, the deep river of prajna wisdom that flows in each of us is blocked and cannot emerge. Chan Master Sheng Yen, the teacher of Rebecca Lee and Guogu, who have taught here, spoke about the steps in gradual practice. We start with a tangled, confused, murky, and very inefficient suffering mind. Recognizing this as causing us problems, we come to meditation, if we're fortunate. Gradually, we cultivate the second stage, concentrated mind. Over time, we're able to recognize that the mind has strayed and return to the method with shorter and shorter excursions of the mind away from the concentrated state. It's important to know that recognizing straying of the mind and returning, these are practice. This is not failure. This is practice. And gradually we become able not to pursue thoughts or to pursue after just a few phrases or a few words in the mind. So we are able to return more quickly. From the Komyozo Zammai by Konejo Zenji. If you do not propagate thoughts, they will not continue themselves, just breathing in, just breathing out, weightless as a flame. Weightless as a flame. The self. Weightless as a flame. Even if 84,000 thoughts come and go, each will display itself as the luminosity of knowing itself. If you do not hold to them and allow them to just go on their own way. Shorter and shorter fragments of thought. Finally, the mind opens into blessed silence. The third stage is completely focused, single-minded mind. Single-minded mind, that's funny. We have periods when there is nothing but the method, and the method takes over. We have periods when time disappears, physical discomfort disappears, and we're surprised when the bell rings. Instead of we are doing the practice, another kind of pivot turns and the practice is doing us. It flows beneath, it flows within everything, whether we're sitting in the zendo, or walking to the cafeteria, or shoveling compost, or eating snacks. Master Bankai said, in the beginning, practice seemed to be a matter of personal will, but along the way, it clearly becomes the will of the Dharma. So instead of us turning the Dharma wheel begins to turn us. Keep your mind as it was when you came into this world, and instantly this very self is a thus come one. Returning to the state of your mind when you just came into this world. Silent and serene, forgetting words, bright clarity appears before you. When we sit with a silent mind, anything can trigger a breakthrough into what Master Shen Ying calls the fourth stage, no mind at all. Instead of being aware of awareness, instead of standing outside and observing awareness, we become awareness itself. Master Muso Soseki a Rinzai master and poet, said, "When the mind is still, the floor where I sit is endless space." At first, Master Muso Soseki was a scholar, but his master Bukoku Zenji advised him that this was not the way to realization. Feeling that his daily zazen was not enough to achieve breakthrough, he entered a 3-year solitary retreat secluded in the mountains. This is what he described happening. "But still I had not yet reached a final view. One day I remembered Bukoku Zenji's parting words. If a student of Zen makes the slightest distinction between the secular world and the priestly world, Satori will remain unattainable." I realized that that although I coveted nothing at all in this secular world, my desire for enlightenment had ensnared my mind and stood in the way of enlightenment. When I realized my mistake, my craving for enlightenment vanished, and from then on I could spend every day with my mind empty. And one night I at last saw through the delusions I had been clinging to. And one morning, the Buddha saw, "O house builder, now I have seen you. You cannot make a new house for me. All your beams and rafters are broken, the ridgepole is shattered. My mind is free from all the conditionings of the past and has no more craving for the future. O house builder, you have been seen. You shall not build the house again. My mind has reached the end of every sort of craving." Sesshin gives us an experience of a quieter mind, with intervals when it is completely quiet, open, and alert. We're used to relaxing the body, like lying down at night in bed, and then also relaxing the mind. Once the to-do list for tomorrow is made and the gratitude journal is filled in, and once you get up to check that you didn't leave the fridge door a little bit open or the knobs on the gas stove not quite shut off, then you can finally lie down and relax the body and go to sleep. We're used to the opposite too. When we get out of bed and stand up, how soon does anxiety for the survival of the self, come into the body, heart, mind system? When we have our first drink of coffee, when we see our to-do list, when we read the news. When does anxiety enter the mind and body? Even a little bit. You can check this for yourself in the morning when you wake up. When does anxiety come in? The state of upright but relaxed but not drowsy, alert but not anxious. The state of upright, relaxed, and widely aware is not a state that we're accustomed to in a busy modern life. It has to be cultivated, actively cultivated, as we're all doing here. It's so interesting to watch the mind become quiet and then see the thoughts begin to pop in, the mind waving a flag. We need to think about this, we really do. And if we ignore that first flag, then it escalates. Well, how about this? Your legs could get gangrene and fall off if you sit here any longer. And the mind conjures up an image of us in a wheelchair with bandaged stumps. The mind is a disaster monger, one student once told me. A monger is a seller, right? The mind is a disaster monger. We have to see that it is the quiet mind that makes part of us feel unsafe and makes it divert back into thinking. Why does part of us fear the quiet mind? If you're driving, are you safer if you're lost in thoughts about the accidents that you've seen or the Instagrams, or are you safer if you're just upright and alert with clear awareness and free to respond? If you're listening to a child or a friend or a client, is your response likely to be more skillful if your mind is full of thoughts, or if you're alert with clear awareness? If you're talking with somebody that you disagree with, does it work well to be rehearsing a rebuttal instead of listening with clear awareness, free of prejudice, reactivity, or labels? These are skills that we cultivate during Sesshin, but they're meant for us to carry them out into the world. It's through practicing them continuously that they become available when we need them. Cultivating the ability to switch from thinking mind to clear, open mind is essential. It is essential for realization. A clear, open mind ground is the essential Dharma gate. It's also essential for all aspects of life. So let's do an exercise. It's a very interesting exercise because it was originally developed to help people switch from sympathetic arousal to parasympathetic calm. So it's been taught as that. But it has another interesting aspect which Fuho teaches. So this is called the 5-7-8 breath. So you start by counting to 5 on the in-breath at your own rate, and then hold your breath for the count of 7, and then exhale to the count of 8. So at first you need to do the counting so you get the rhythm of the breath. So let's all begin that. Counting to 5 on the in-breath. At first I'll count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the out-breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, do it yourself. One more time. And when you get to the end of the out-breath, just rest for a moment. What do you notice about the mind at the end of that exhalation? There is an experience before thinking that is not dissociation or trance, but is highly functional. This is because discursive thought, which is fueled by anxiety for the self, however subtle, is not in the way. More energy becomes available because we're not blocking it by constant thinking. And discursive thought anxiety is not sapping our energy. When we carry this deep river of inner silence into daily life, when it flows beneath whatever we're doing, when we lose track of it and then realize we've lost track of it and touch back in with that deep, silent river. This is the integration of our practice into daily life, which is a phase of long maturation in practice. It is the experience that we chant, the body being empty, the arms are in activity. When we can carry that silent, deep mind with us into all activity, that is mature practice. The Tibetans have a proverb about enlightenment. So close you can't see it. So deep you can't fathom it. So simple you can't believe it. So good you can't accept it. Please see it, experience it, fathom its depths. Have experiences that result in belief and accept its goodness. Thank you.